Well, once again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live webcast for the betterment of the structural engineering profession, a joint CASE, NCSEA, and SEI town hall event. Thank you for joining us. At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to our moderator, Stacey Bartoletti, to begin this year's town hall.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So I am Stacey Bartoletti, CEO and Chair of the Board for Degenkolb Engineers and the 2020-21 Chair of the Coalition of American Structural Engineers at ACEC. I'm pleased to be your moderator for this third town hall event. This is the third one of these that we've done in this series. This event is being hosted jointly by CASE, the Coalition of American Structural Engineers at ACEC, NCSEA, the National Council of Structural Engineers Associations, and SEI, the Structural Engineering Institute of ASCE. The organizations represented here today on our panel each have a long history of supporting the structural engineering profession with origins that go back to the 80s and 90s. In the early years, the organizations did not always work in unison. However, over the past 7 or 8 years, they've been actively coordinating and collaborating for the betterment of structural engineering. In early 2019, the three organizations published the joint vision for the future of structural engineering, and since then have been holding a joint town hall to discuss various aspects of progress relative to the joint vision. This is now our third town hall, with past ones in 2021 and 2022. The joint vision can be found on any of the three organizations' websites and includes the key initiatives of leadership, education, mentoring, professional development, licensure, codes and standards, resilience, diversity, industry collaboration, and advocacy. Today, we'll give a brief introduction to our panelists and will then ask the three organization leaders to introduce their organizations. Our panelists today include from CASE, Bruce Burt, Senior Principal with Ruby & Associates at Degenkolb Company and current Chair of CASE. From CASE representing SELC, Kristen Kilgore, Principal with FSB Architects and Engineers and past Chair of the Structural Engineering Licensure Coalition, SELC. From NCSEA, Ryan Kirsting, Principal with Bueller and President of NCSEA. Also from NCSEA, Rose McClure, Senior Project Manager at Simpson Gumberts and Hager and co-founder and past Chair of the NCSEA Structural Engineering Engagement and Equity Committee. From SEI, Jerry Hajar, the CDM Smith Professor and Department Chair for the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Northeastern University and current President of SEI. And also from SEI, Don Scott with Don Scott Consulting and past President of SEI and Chair of ASCE SEI 7. So following a brief introduction from the three hosting organizations, we will facilitate a discussion on the three key areas of first, climate change, resiliency, and sustainability is related to the SE practice led by SEI. Second will be DEI best practices, trends, and resources in the SE profession led by NCSEA. And third, structural licensure led by CASE and SELC. So first, I'm going to turn over to Bruce to introduce yourself and CASE.
Thank you, Stacey. It's great to be here today representing CASE. I'm Bruce Burt, and I'm current chair of CASE. The Coalition of Structural Engineers was the first coalition established within ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies. CASE is dedicated to making structural engineering firms more efficient and more profitable with less risk. CASE helps structural engineering firms develop their businesses by sharing best practices and helping reduce professional liability exposure, thereby increasing firm profitability and sustainability. CASE offers numerous resources that aid in the practice of structural engineering, including programs. CASE provides educational programming focusing on risk management and business practices. CASE provides program content for CASE conferences, as well as ACEC Annual Convention, ACEC's Fall Conference, SEI Structures Congress, NCSEA Summit, and NASCC, the Steel Conference, as well as ACEC hosted webinars. CASE also provides guidelines. CASE develops the guidelines on business practices such as performing site visits or addressing the coordination and completeness of construction documents. CASE also provides toolkits for facilitating everyday tasks such as client evaluation and project fee development. And lastly, CASE provides contracts. CASE has developed a suite of contracts adapted to the special needs of the practicing structural engineer. There's a short form and a long form agreement for professional services, and other specialized agreements pertain to special inspection services, structural condition assessments, peer review services, and forensic engineering. There are also agreements for procuring consultants such as geotechnical engineers and for digital data transfer. Membership in CASE is firm-based, as is membership in CASE's parent organization, ACEC.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Ryan, tell us about yourself and NCSEA, please.
Thanks, Stacey. Rose and I are excited to be here today. For those who don't know us, NCSEA was established in 1993, and we're happy to be celebrating 30 years of providing support for individual practicing structural engineers and advocacy on behalf of the structural engineering profession. Our stated mission is to support practicing structural engineers to be highly qualified professionals and successful leaders. We fulfill this mission through offering a robust continuing education program to give engineers the technical and non-technical tools they need, bringing the perspectives of practicing structural engineers to the application and development of codes and standards, and through advocacy and collaborative efforts focused on improving the profession and building awareness of it in our communities. Our vision is for structural engineers to be valued for their contributions to safe structures and resilient communities. NCSEA is comprised of 44 member organizations at the state level that represent over 10,000 individual practicing engineers. We advance our mission through offering support and resources to these member organizations, and this bottom-up organizational model allows for national level vision to be realized locally through close collaboration with practitioners across the country. We're excited about the progress being made through a number of long-standing activities that you're familiar with, like SE3 that we'll talk more about today, as well as some recent additions to NCSEA's initiatives in support of practicing structural engineers and our profession. You probably know us best through our educational offerings, including our continuing education webinar program, various design guide publications, and of course, the annual NCSEA Summit. Some of the notable newer initiatives include the We See Above and Beyond campaign, which is elevating awareness of the importance of our profession in our communities. The development of the NCSEA Media Spokesperson Bureau to bring the voice and perspective of practicing structural engineers to conversations and stories in the media when they occur. And of course, the work of the NCSEA Foundation, which is investing in the profession through the annual Diversity in Structural Engineering Scholarship Program and the inaugural Innovation in Structural Engineering Grant focused on artificial intelligence. NCSEA has a board of directors that spans the breadth of our country and the practicing structural engineers throughout various regions around the country. We have multiple national level committees covering various aspects of the practice, the newest of which are resilience and sustainable design. And we encourage practicing structural engineers of all levels to join us and become engaged either at their local state level, the national level, or both.
Great, Ryan. Lots of opportunity for activity there. Thank you. Jerry, please tell us about SEI.
Yeah, Stacey, thank you very much. Don, Scott, and I are happy to be here, and thanks to all of you for joining this town hall. The Structural Engineering Institute is one of the 9 institutes of the American Society of Civil Engineers. The mission of SEI is to advance and serve the structural engineering profession. SEI membership worldwide is approximately 30,000 and includes professionals working in buildings, bridges, non-building structures, practicing engineers, students, research scientists, academics, technologists, material suppliers, contractors, owners, and really anyone with an interest in structural engineering can be a part of SEI. SEI recently underwent a reorganization effective October 1st, 2023, the first in its history since it started in 1996. And here we transition from 5 divisions to 2 communities, a technical community and a professional community. And that are structured to foster more fluid interaction between our committees and within these communities and between the 2 communities themselves. Nearly 2,000 SEI members participate on over 100 technical and professional committees, including 26 national standards, one of which is ASCE 7, the National Standard for Structural Engineering, and we're one of the largest publishers of structural engineering content in the world. SEI advances our vision for structural engineering through developing and promoting a wide range of technical and professional initiatives, fostering new standards and pre-standards, advancing resilience and sustainability, advocating for licensure, advancing greater awareness and goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and enhancing mentoring within the profession. We also host a number of signature conferences and workshops throughout each year, including the SEI Structures Congress, which this year is called SEI Con 24 and is being held in conjunction with the North American Steel Construction Conference, March 20th through 22nd in San Antonio, Texas. For those interested, there are many ways to get involved, and we welcome new participants on our many committees and our initiatives. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, so let's now dive into the first of our topics of climate change, resilience, and sustainability related to the SE practice. And Jerry and Don are going to take us through that discussion. So Jerry and Don, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Stacey. And we'll start with the climate change impacts. And Michelle, if you can start the little video there. Hopefully this will work. Nope. We'll go back.
Inevitable that we have some type of problem, right, Don? That's okay.
Oh, we always have technical problems. Someplace on the right-hand element, you should be able to click, and there should be a thing to start that video. Sorry, maybe we'll just go on about it. When you look at the video, if the video shows, and you can see the little QR code I've given there for NCI or from NASA data, it shows how our global temperature is warming since 1880, which is pre-industrial. That's why everybody goes back to 1880 when the pre-industrial period. And why is temperature a good indicator for climate change? And as we look at it, as the temperature rises, and I will say the last 6 months of last year was the largest increase in global temperature that we've had in the nation. But as the temperature rises, clouds can store more water, and that results in increased rainfall. And of course, the increased rainfall results in increased flooding. We're seeing that across California is getting, of course, hammered right now, and we've seen it across the Northeast earlier in this year. But also as the temperature rises, sea surface temperatures rise. This results in higher intensity tropical cyclones, or as we call them here in the United States, hurricanes, which give increased higher winds, and storm surge is now becoming much larger because of this intensification of these storms, and with a lot of inclusive flooding that we saw earlier in Florida this year. As temperatures rise, snowfall decreases. You think, oh, that's a great thing. However, the rain on snow becomes a greater design parameter that we need to look at. So these are all issues that come with climate change. And then again, as temperatures rise, convective storms, and what I mean by convective storms are thunderstorms or tornadoes, derechos, those type of events that occur. And those lead to higher winds and increased, of course, our tornado activity. This year, just so you know, last year, the insured losses from convective storms rose 16% from what they had from the year before. So they are increasing as we move forward. And then, of course, as temperature rise, the one that is most known for everybody, sea level rises, which causes coastal flooding and land loss as we go forth. So all of that comes from the temperature, and that's why we always look at temperature when we look at next slide, or at this issue. So go ahead with the next slide, Michelle, since the video didn't work there. The one thing that NCSEA actually did a survey back here earlier this last year and looked at, would we want to include environmental design loads in with the effects of climate change within ASCE 7. And you can see we did that survey a few years ago. The results were almost opposite, but now it's about 70% say yes and 30% say not sure on there. And so, like I said, it shows that our profession is looking for those changes, and you're getting them every day within practice now. And so we're starting to incorporate them into our loading standard. So next slide, Michelle there. And of course, that's within ASCE 7. And the overall goal of is to, of course, is to improve our nation's infrastructure and community resilience by protecting these individuals that we work for. ASCE, of course, is the loading standard that's used throughout the U.S. and various parts of the world and to define the minimum design loads that we use in our practice every day. The 2000 edition is currently under development. And Jerry mentioned that we have about 2,000 volunteers. Well, we have over 900 individuals working on this update to ASCE 7 for the 28 edition. And within it, we're going to have our proposed chapter on loading for future conditions that will give us some guidance on what to do for climate change for the design loads. Next, with that, ASCE and SEI have partnered with NOAA to gain some of that information. And you ask, why do we need that? Well, we need to understand the climate change projections, those that are coming up. And NOAA has been doing many of those for the years. And so they assist the ASCE 7 committee with understanding of the effects of climate change on these environmental loads that we're looking at. And like I said, SEI is working with NOAA as well as other federal partners to develop the projections that are needed. So when you look at it, we think about NOAA's doing these projections, or other federal agencies are doing these projections, but they're at about the 30,000 foot level. When they do climate change projections and what's going to be in the future, they look at it for a continent. So for the whole United States, what are going to be the increased wind speeds or the increased rainfall for the United States? And that's what their models are based upon. And so we are working with them in our partnership to get them down to a regional level, at least. This takes a lot of analysis and supercomputers that NOAA uses to get it down to that regional level. And then from the regional level, the ASCE 7 committee will take it down and get it into what we use, adopted into write the provisions for ASCE 7. So like I said, this partnership allows us the access to the latest available climate projections, which are hard to do and hard to understand in some ways. But we're working side by side with these federal agencies to extrapolate that data down to the scale that we need for our document. And you can see on the next slide, thanks, Michelle, that SEI partners with many federal agencies to develop these design loads. You don't really think about it, but when you look at it, of course, USGS for the seismic, NIST for wind, NIST for tornado, some you probably even heard about, Corel and FEMA, and all of those that we work with to develop these hazards and put them into our standards. So you can look at, for the climate one, for the future conditions chapter, there, NIST, FEMA, NOAA, and NASA are all involved. And you kind of go, why NASA? NASA does retain a lot of data for weather conditions. And so we use that data to go as much from all of these agencies to figure out what we're going to need look for future conditions. A lot of our federal agencies understand that work on these committees aren't given direct funding to do it, but they're like us, volunteering on the standard to do what they can to incorporate climate change within the standard. So like I said, a lot of that, hopefully that direct support will be changed with our MOU with NOAA. The next slide, like I said, so SEI develops the standard. It produces it. It's still on a regional level to an extent, what comes out of ASCE 7. Then it's adopted into the IBC for your local jurisdictions to use. The 2022 is adopted into the 2024 IBC, which was recently published or recently available. It's not, my understanding is you still can't buy the hard copies, but you can look at it online. And then that is then used to protect the lives. You can see from a hurricane event, some of the structures that withstood because they were built to the latest code. The 2028 edition of ASCE 7 will go hopefully into the 2030 International Building Code. So this is a 10-year process that goes on. And so how we consider our environment loads has changed over the last 10 years. So how are we going to project this out for the next 100 years, let's say? So like I said, it makes that all very much more difficult. But we're working on it. We should be able to get that accomplished and ready for production into the 2028 edition. Next slide. So many of the local jurisdictions already require us as practicing engineers to consider climate change. You look at some of the ones, most of these have to do with flooding or with sea level rise, because that is the most well-known condition right now. However, like I said, we're working on that. Some of them are coming up with the new rain intensity as well. And so we're working with them to get this incorporated. But like I said, most of them deal with sea level rise or flooding right now. And we're working to get onto there for the next cycle to increase some of those loads that we have to deal with. And so give you some guidance, give designers guidance on what to do. And the next slide, just a little comment with that, of course, basis of developing for climate change is we're really looking at resilience, community resilience, and what does it mean, and how can our communities come back after these large events that occur. And so as SEI, Jerry mentioned it, SEI is working a lot on resilience, and it comes with a coordination of updating. SEI and NIST are coordinating on the updating of their community resilience planning guide for inclusion of climate impacts. Those are going on, some workshops there, and we'll see what comes out of that. Possible functional recovery provisions for seismic loading into ASCE 728. And I would say Ryan Kirsting from here on the call from NCSEA is leading that effort in the seismic subcommittee for functional recovery provisions. And so hopefully those type of things will go forth. We also looked at we're working with other different groups and agencies for resilience concepts within our design standard. And then one thing that many are probably not aware of that's available to you, Jennifer Gopiel, from our managing director at SEI, working with ASC, has developed what's called a Pathways to Resilient Communities. That is available and has been distributed to your members of Congress so they understand what's going on. But this lists the documents that are available to help you with these resilience concepts, and particularly what standards we have now to help you when your owner asks you to include them within your design. And so really, like I said, these efforts are to improve the resilience. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Jerry.
Great. Thank you, Don. Next slide, please. Don discussed some of the most important work in SEI related to sustainability and resilience, but there's a wide range of other activities that are ongoing. And I'd first like to highlight the broader importance of structural engineering on the issues of sustainability and resilience, in addition, of course, to the critical work on preparing for potential changes in our hazardous threats. For example, COP28 that was held in the UAE last December put forward what they called a breakthrough agenda with several key components related directly to structural engineering. This breakthrough agenda puts forward initiatives for achieving net zero embodied carbon and related sustainability objectives. In the breakthrough agenda now include discussing steel and new this year, cement and concrete and buildings. So of direct relation to structural engineering and construction. Construction and use of buildings generates approximately 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, approximately 40% of all pollution, about 40% of all material flow, and about 40% of all waste. Structural engineers have a huge role to play in these issues. Next slide. The Structural Engineering Institute, as well as ASC, have several committees actively working in these areas. For example, the SEI Technical Committee on Sustainability, that's currently led by Jay Earhart, has put forward several excellent documents of direct use to structural engineers, all available through ASCE. For example, they've put forward monographs on achieving net zero embodied carbon in structural materials by 2050, whole building life cycle assessment, and structural materials and global climate. The SE 2050 effort, an outstanding initiative led by Mike Grinick, is securing corporate commitments to addressing issues of sustainability and design, and is providing vital information and data to help drive these issues forward. There's a number of other examples of work going on related to the SEI Resilience Committee, the ASC Infrastructure Resilience Division, and for example, the recently released ASC Standard Practice for Sustainable Infrastructure. Next slide, please. The upcoming SEICon 24 has several sessions related to sustainability and resilience, including a workshop on the future of structural engineering and embodied carbon, and a session on climate change and structural loads. We're also hosting other workshops that are open to the public. For example, tornado hazard research and advancement to improve community resilience, March 7th and 8th at ASC headquarters in Reston, Virginia. You can learn more about this and other initiatives at www.asc.org/SEI. And please feel free to reach out to me or to SEI if you'd like to get more involved. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Don and Jerry. I know I've got several questions on my mind, but I think in the interest of time right now, we're going to move to our second topic, and we're going to hold questions for the end. So our next topic here is DEI best practices, trends, and resources by Ryan and Rose. I'm going to turn over to Ryan and Rose.
Great. Thanks, Stacey. I think we all recognize how important DEI is for our profession. The desire and the need for us to provide an inclusive culture for all who seek to become a structural engineer or engage in our community, as well as the desire for our profession to reflect and include the perspectives of the communities around us. So one of the key examples of collaboration between the three organizations was the joint call to action in 2020. Our joint vision from 2019 included diversity and promoting diversity and expanding diversity within our profession. But in 2020, we had the opportunity to work together on a joint call to action. This was allowing the groups to speak with one voice and align on common goals and missions around DEI in particular. And so we were thankful to have that opportunity to collaborate. I'm also thankful to report that our organizations are all effectively working on this topic together, as well as promoting our own initiatives. And today we'll be hearing a little bit more about NCSEA and the SE3 group, because progress is certainly being made, but clearly we know more work remains. But I'm thankful for the SE3 committee, the leadership they provided, the vision and the insight they've brought to this space and this topic from even before 2020. So with that, I would like to ask Rose to go ahead and give us a little bit of background. And Michelle, you can turn to the next slide. Rose, I know you were one of the co-founders of SE3 initially. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background of where it started and some of the overarching goals to inform people.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Ryan, and everyone for having me here today. So SE3 began as a special project initiative within the Northern California SEA, so SEONC. And at the time, our goal was to promote dialogue and to raise awareness on professional practice issues that affected engagement, retention, diversity, and inclusion within the profession. So we were focused primarily on advancing and retaining women structural engineers, but our scope really early on broadened to include other forms of diversity, most notably race. And so this being our target audience being a bunch of structural engineers, we decided that the best way to promote dialogue was to start by collecting data. And so we did that by launching our first SE3 survey in 2016. And that survey reached about 2,000 practicing structural engineers. And we started reporting and publishing some of the findings from that survey in late 2016. We became a national committee under NCSEA in 2017. And then really NCSEA as a platform helped us to broaden our reach to other practicing structural engineers and to spread this important conversation farther. So After that initial formation, we did 2 subsequent surveys in 2018 and 2020. And today I'm happy to report that the committee has really grown, and we have representation in over 10 different local chapters across the country. And people in all different parts of the country and profession are having these important conversations because of it.
Yeah, thanks. And we recognize that the work of SE3 has allowed us to already make improvements on making our profession more attractive, more rewarding, more engaging. And really, it's benefiting individuals at the individual level, but also benefiting our firms, allowing our firms to have better experiences for our employees, but also offer better services to the community around us and our clients. If we go to the next slide. Rose mentioned some of the good work that SE3 has been doing, the initiatives and resources. I want to highlight a few, and then we'll ask Rose to maybe pick a couple to give us a little bit more information about. Rose mentioned the surveys back in 2016, 2018, and 2020. These have been critical to gather the data that we've needed to benchmark where we're at in the industry, to gather experiences from all of those in different aspects of our industry and our profession. And then allowed SE3 and others to develop tools, best practices, resources, guides, and topic briefs in order to help us navigate changes to make our profession more inclusive and to benefit those individuals in our community. Topic briefs include some of the more recent things like 2023, the inclusive recruitment and hiring best practices. But we've also had individual standalone in-depth sessions in the SE3 symposiums back in 2019 and 2023. And we've also introduced the Read, Watch, Listen resources in 2020 following the call to action. So Rose, maybe I'll pause here for a second and see if there may be a few of these that you'd like to bring a little bit more attention to and highlight something in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I would be happy to. So first, I'll start with the little icon on the bottom. That's the Read, Watch, Listen series. For anybody who, on an individual or a firm level, is looking to educate themselves on issues surrounding inclusion and belonging and how this impacts our work as structural engineers, I highly recommend that series. It's a monthly program that brings together articles, written articles, videos, and listening content for anybody who wants to just become better acquainted with the topics that we feature each month. So that's a really great resource. I think that the topic briefs are one that I'm especially proud of that followed the 2020 survey. The way that these were organized after 3 subsequent surveys was based on a variety of topics that we were exploring in our research through the data. And so these are fairly accessible 3 to 6 page documents that have brief highlights on what we found as a result of that data collection effort. And they're organized around specific topics such as career aspirations, how you might provide performance feedback as a manager in an inclusive way, the impact of flexibility and our work arrangements on capturing more of our talent workforce, and the like. And so those are really short snips and a great way to start to inform yourself of some of the trends and the data that we see within our profession. And the last thing I will say is this inclusive hiring practice document is one that we also really appreciate the great work of a task force dedicated to this effort in 2022. For anybody who's in a hiring or recruitment role within your firm, I think that this is a great document to just highlight the different considerations you can make to bring more intention to your recruiting practices, to really try and capture as much of the workforce as you can when you're pondering who to bring into your organization and the values that you represent. So that's it.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I'll just give a quick little plug also for, like you mentioned, we're having great success now at a lot of local levels. And I'll just at least call out Northern California in particular. And the icon in the upper right here is a number of, I think, best practices or guides that they've also developed to supplement the 2020 topic briefs at the national level. And some of those resources get a little bit more detail on the SEI website and offer a little bit more additional resources for those that are looking for more information on things like mentorship programs or flexibility benefits, and how you can actually go about implementing things at your local firm or within your local SEA or organization seeking to support each other better. All right, next slide. As Rose mentioned, Read, Watch, Listen is a great resource, and I wanted to at least highlight this just briefly because it's meant to be bringing attention to resources that are outside of the normal realm of SE3. It's not just promoting SE3 topics or products. It really is looking at other resources that are out there, other news and topics that are of interest to those who are looking to get additional information on these topics. And this is also a way for us to collaborate and share the good work happening with our sister organizations, CASE and SEI. So in particular, you see this one from January more recently does highlight one of the ACEC publications. And so I want to spend just a couple of minutes highlighting some of the good work and resources that are available from our other organizations. So next slide, please. So CASE and ACEC do have DEI resources available. We've been talking with our friends at CASE, and we know that ACEC has a lot of energy and momentum in this space. The ACEC Research Institute has developed their diversity roadmap, and I know there's a couple links here on the slides that I'm sure will be available to folks afterwards. But that diversity roadmap is something that is a good tool for firms to look at how they're doing on the diversity space for their own firms. As well as collecting data for all of us in the civil engineering industry based on the ACEC firms who have responded to the survey that is involving the diversity roadmap. There is a webinar recording explaining their diversity roadmap that's available through the ACEC Research Institute. I know there's also, of course, another webinar coming up in March. So I want to give a quick shout out for that and their DEIB committee and the good work they're doing. Next slide. Likewise, SEI is partnering with their parent organization, ASCE, in developing a number of DEI-related resources and initiatives and topics. ASCE has a diversity, equity, and inclusion website, and they have a number of resources there. They have a best practices resource guide that they've developed. That's what you see here on the side. And they have a webinar recording about that guide to help you understand the tools and the resources available through that guide. The ASCE Mosaic Committee is very active. I know that SEI is also working on a DEI or D&I committee, and there are some D&I or DE&I sessions upcoming at the SEI Con 24 conference that Jerry was mentioning earlier. Next slide. And then in addition to what we've been talking about as SE3 resources, some of these are a little bit of repeat, but NCSEA has a website devoted to our DEI resources to supplement what you've seen SE3 talking about. So for those of you looking for additional information or additional training, you can go to this website. The 2020 DEI webinar education series followed the call to action, and it gave us a lot of good baseline information and training to help us navigate through the DEI space better. We had that, like I mentioned, a 2022 paper on inclusive recruitment and hiring practices. We have the 2020 topic briefs that cover a lot of DEI topics. And then the Read, Watch, Listen resources is something that's been ongoing for a number of years now that we hope people are tapping into. In addition, NCSEA is investing in DEIB Leadership Learning and Development Series for 2024. It's entitled Building Capacity Towards Action to help us with our organizational planning for DEI. How do we at NCSEA embrace DEI better, and also to train our individuals engaged in SE3 at various levels of our organization. We've shared the training agenda with our colleagues at SEI and CASE and are looking forward to continue to collaborate together on making our organizations more inclusive. We do have additional NCSEA surveys coming up. I saw maybe someone was asking about that in the chat. We don't have them ready to announce today, but we are doing some benchmarking surveys later this year to look at compensation, benefits, and demographic data specific to the SE profession. We think there's a gap there in the space that the data is pretty thorough for the civil engineering profession, but a little bit lacking for structural engineering specific data. So we're looking to build that survey out and then supplement that with some more of the experience surveys that you're used to seeing from SE3. And again, we have lots of DEI education content planned for the summit coming up in November in Las Vegas. With that, I think we can transition, Rose, a little bit to maybe some closing thoughts. I know we've talked a lot about DEI resources. I wonder if you have any thoughts you'd like to share about, steps or actions that maybe different individuals or firms or our organizations can take coming from your expertise on the SE3 side of things and just your awareness of what's happening in the profession around us.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to. So I'll try to frame my closing thoughts along different potential audiences, right? So at the firm leadership level, I think that it's important for us to recognize that there does seem to be this shift in the needs of what the younger generation of structural engineers are asking for. When I started working in this profession 15 years ago, I never would have dreamed of asking about questions related to gender diversity or workplace culture or work-life balance in an interview setting, right? And nowadays, I think those conversations are commonplace in an interview setting. And so I think that from a firm leadership level, we really need to reinforce this notion that diversity and inclusion is at its core a conversation related to engagement and retention, right? And that's what SE3 has always tried to promote, that this is about ensuring that we have the capacity to expand our profession to welcome everybody and anybody who's interested in pursuing their careers here. For firm leaders, I would just suggest that they ask themselves there's no one size fits all when it comes to DEI. And so you really need to figure out what it is that your individual business and workplace needs. And from an organizational standpoint, I love these town hall events. I think that CASE, NCSEA, and SEI are all doing wonderful things for our profession. And I can personally testify to the number of people who have approached me and shared the extent to which these initiatives have encouraged and allowed people to stay in the profession when they would have otherwise looked for other options elsewhere, right? So at the individual level, I'll just say that I think that we all have a capacity within ourselves to advocate and to be an ally for individuals who do not necessarily feel like they belong. If you do belong to one of these marginalized groups that, and you're currently struggling through something within the profession, just know that you have a place here, that this profession is one of the, I'm a bit biased, but I think that we're full of a lot of really great individuals who care about nurturing and fostering mentorship in the next generation of leaders within our profession. And so I think that these conversations about DEI are just a wonderful testament to how we want to support the future of our profession. So that's all.
Great, thanks, Rose. And again, just really appreciating the leadership that SE3 has shown. The individuals who've been engaged over the years to help us have these courageous conversations, have prepared us to be able to tackle these topics, and have informed and empowered our organizations to make these actions and to develop these resources for all of us to benefit from. And again, also thankful for the firms that are out there innovating in this space and leading by example, because it does take those that have the vision and have the capacity and willingness to do it to prove it to the rest of us to some degree and say, it's not that hard, we can do this together. And thankfully, we're collaborating with CASE, NCSEA, and SEI in this space as well. Just to reiterate, we do expect to have another NCSEA SE3 survey coming up. We don't have a date set for that yet. We do have the salary benefits and compensation benchmarking survey coming soon, probably in Q2 or Q3. And then the SE3 survey will probably follow late in 24 or early 2025. So with that, Stacey, we've probably used our time, but happy to take some Q&A maybe as the group session.
Great. Thanks, Ryan and Rose. Really great to see and hear all the wonderful things that are happening with DEI and the resources available. I think it has been impactful, but there's still, obviously, we all know work to be done on the topic. So thank you. Let's move on to our next topic, our third and final topic, and then we'll move into some Q&A sessions. So our third topic here is structural licensure, and Bruce and Kristen are going to be leading that discussion.
Thank you, Stacey. And thank you, Kristen Kilgore, for joining us today. Currently, there are 25 states that have some form of special provisions regarding the practice of structural engineering. 2 states, Illinois and Hawaii, require a structural engineering license to practice structural engineering without restriction on the type of structure. 8 states have a partial practice act. In most states with a partial practice act, design of significant structures is restricted to licensed structural engineers. 2 states, Idaho and Nebraska, have title acts where structural engineer is a legal title. However, in these title act states, you need not be a structural engineer to design any type structure. And 13 states have statutes providing a roster designation. In these states, a licensee can be recognized by their discipline. Florida has a structural engineering recognition program, which allows use of the designation Florida Board Recognized Structural Engineer. However, recognition by the program is not required for a professional engineer to practice structural engineering in Florida. So Kristen, what trends are we seeing in SE licensure?
Well, Bruce, thank you for having me as your guest today to discuss SE licensure. I want to make a quick note too that SE licensure is a very fluid conversation that's very responsive to the political and needs of the states. So if anything on this map you feel in your state should be represented differently, please reach out to your NCSEA, the SE Licensure Committee, or SELC, because it's 50 states with different legislatures that move in and out yearly. It's sometimes hard to keep track of all the changes within the SE licensure. So that's where we really call action to you, to our members, to engage in this discussion and keep this very up to date for everybody who's leading the discussion. So with that, kind of what we're seeing, the big hot topics right now are around computer-based testing, significant structures, the definitions, and how they vary based on jurisdictions, the conversation of the PE versus the SE, and then is a PE first, and then an SE additional credential, and also the applicable title-based, the examination and the state licensure procedures. And then finally, lots of conversations around certification. And so today, we're going to kind of delve into some of those.
Great. So Kristen, how does the SE profession interact with NCEES?
So NCEES, there's going to be a lot of acronyms when we talk about SE licensure. So
We should probably use them all the same way, right?
Yes, we are. And sometimes I might get them mixed up. So, bear with me as we go through this conversation. So the first one, NCEES, is the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying. So most people interact with this organization when they get their FE for the first time as an engineer. This is an organization that advances licensure for engineers and surveyors in order to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So they provide nationally normed examinations. They provide uniform model laws and model rules for adoption by the member boards. And then they promote professional ethics among all engineers and surveyors. And they coordinate with the domestic and international organizations to advance licensure of all engineers and surveyors. So they try to help with comity. And so a lot of people have a NCEES record as well once you become a licensed engineer. What's important to note about this organization is that it is made up of member state boards of licensures from all 50 states and US territories. So this organization is a representative of the licensing boards of each state, and it collects information and provides a platform for those boards to discuss best practices when it comes to licensure. Next, SELC, which is the past chair, is the Structural Engineering Licensure Coalition. Similar to this joint town hall, these are representatives from NCSEA, SEI, and CASE. And they talk about how each of the organizations are discussing licensure. So we really are trying to champion the cause of structural engineering licensure and build consensus among all the stakeholders so that we're all working in the same direction when it comes to SE licensure. We endorse the model law structural engineering standard developed by NCEES. We advocate jurisdictions require SE licensure for anyone who provides structural engineering services for significant structures. And we recognize that when SE licensure is enacted in each jurisdiction, is important to ensure that an equitable transition process as defined by that state licensing board is available for the individual practicing structural engineering that was once a licensed PE. So we encourage all jurisdictions to incorporate these provisions into their current engineering licensure laws. And we support the modification of the existing PE statutes and regulations to implement SE licensure as a post-PE credential. So recently, SELC, which was kind of big news for us, was accepted into what's called the POLC, which is the Participating Organizations Liaison Council. This really benefits the membership because it includes more networking with state licensing board members, as really SELC is the subject matter expert when it comes to structural engineering licensure. We also host the Structural Caucus, which is held at the NCES national meeting. And in the past, we get to set the agenda for this caucus, where we get to discuss priority SE licensure topics with the licensing boards that attend. We've presented the vision of structural engineering licensure. We've had a conversation around computer-based testing and also transitioning clauses. So we're always looking for more topics to expand, again, as a subject matter expert to the NCES organization. Additionally, we have NSPE, the National Society of Professional Engineers. They have been established to create an inclusive, non-technical organization dedicated to the interest of licensed professional engineers, regardless of practice area. They want to protect engineers and the public from unqualified practitioners, build public recognition for the profession, and stand against unethical practices and inadequate compensation. Today, they value ethics and accountability, qualifications, professional advancement, and unity. So I include this organization because they are a player when it comes to the legislative conversation, and we at SELC try to interact with NSPE and keep conversations flowing. So all of these organizations influence SE licensure nationwide, always making this an intriguing topic with so many different stakeholders.
Yes, that's quite a few entities providing licensure. Must be a challenge keeping current with so many stakeholders and jurisdictions.
Yes, yes. That's why we need people to help us.
Yes, yes, definitely. So changing the subject slightly, this is the first year that the SE exam will be entirely computer-based. Why is this needed, Kristen? And what are the benefits of computer-based testing?
Well, computer-based testing, according to NCES, offers enhanced security for exam content. It offers uniformity in testing conditions, and then also schedule flexibility. And really, it's kind of the transition of the times. Everything's tends to be going computer-based. NCES began transitioning all disciplines to computer-based in 2011. With COVID, there kind of was kind of a break where it went on pause. And then when we came back from COVID, this topic, in particular for structural engineering licensure, became a very hot topic. The exam is designed to include both traditional multiple choice questions and what are titled alternative item types. All of this can be found on NCES's website as well if you're curious to learn more. The AIT, they include multiple correct, which allow a user to select multiple answers, a point and click, which is you click on a part of the graphic to answer, a drag and drop, and then where you click and you drag to match, where you can sort, rank, or label, and then also your traditional fill in the blank. So this test is broken into now 4 sessions. There is the vertical and lateral breadth portion, which goes live very shortly here, April 1st in 2024. In this, you will have 55 questions, 45 will be scored, and 10 are pre-test that go into the testing question bank. The appointment time is about 6 hours, but the exam is 5.5 hours. And after the launch date, the exam is available anytime the exam centers are open. So this is where the flexibility comes into place. So throughout the year, any person who's wanting to start taking their structural engineering exams can pick the date that best and time that best accommodates their schedule for the vertical and the lateral breath portions. Now, again, that's 2 tests, one for vertical, one for lateral breath. Now, the depth portion is a little bit more entailed in that it will be offered twice a year. The vertical depth is currently scheduled April 16th and October 9th in 2024, and the lateral depth is April 17th and October 10th, 2024. It will be 60 questions, 40 scored, and 20 pretest. There'll be 5 scenarios. 4 of them contain 12 items with 10 scored, and then the 5th is a pretest. It'll be computer graded and include only alternative item types. The appointment time is 5.5 hours. The exam time is 5 hours. So, some things to note. There is no limit on the time to successfully pass the exam modules. So you have unlimited time to pass all 4 of those different modules, which again offers some flexibility for those taking the test. Last fall, they had around 1,300 people sign up and around 1,200 took the exam. So what's interesting to note is once you do sign up for exam, then the study materials from NCES become available. So there's some different strategies I'm sure people are contemplating in how they want to approach this exam. So additionally, cut scores are scheduled to be processed, and then the depth for the breadth. The depth cut score, they're having a test score event May 17th through 21st is scheduled, where a licensed individual will take the exam and that will help determine the cut score. This will provide data for the test for the first time because right now this is new. We don't have the data background yet. And what's really critical and what NCES has put a call out is for bridge engineers. They're really looking for more input from the bridge community in structural engineering to influence the exam and to help with the cut scores.
Yeah. Michelle, could you advance to the next slide, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So SALC will be tracking the trend data around the test as it becomes published. But at this time, there's really not much to observe. We know what NCES publishes. So here's pass rates from last fall, and until we start engaging in this format, we just don't know what we'll find.
Yes, it will be interesting to see how the results in the pass rates from the new computer-based test compare to previous tests. So one last question, Kristen, how does this impact practicing engineers, and what happens next to move this topic forward?
Yeah, and as I kind of stated earlier, engineering licensure is always fluid and is responsive to the communities and the legislature. So it's important because as our world grows and our practices grow across state lines more frequently, we really need to understand how our credentials impact comedy as practicing engineers. This continues to roll in the discussion about a PE and an SE as a post-PE credential, which is another conversation. But uniformity amongst licensure laws makes the process more simple for a practicing engineer, hence the model law developed by NCES. But really the fact remains that licensure is a state issue, with member states facing different circumstances, both environmental or political, that influence our built environment. So as structural engineers, we recognize this unique responsibility we have to protect the safety, health, and welfare of the public. So I really do encourage everyone to get involved at their state level board of licensure first. Go listen to what they're hearing and what's getting presented to the legislature. Learn about how your state navigates licensure for engineers and meet with your board who really represent you statewide in all disciplines of engineering to enforce your state's laws. Next, engage in the conversation and join either the SE licensure committee through NCSEA or SEI as a licensure committee as well, or SCLC, and engage with NCES. There are always opportunities for you to influence the discussion. For example, NCES will be sending a professional activities knowledge-based survey to the industry. And they're going to need volunteers to help develop the questions for the next exams. The survey is what's used to develop the specifications for the content of the exams. And then finally, SCLC is working on updating the significant structures model recommendations that we do have on our website, as well as developing those topics for the structural caucus in the fall. So please consider volunteering, but we're here to help advocate at the state licensure level for smart licensing laws.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for your time and dedication in advancing the structural engineering profession and for joining us here today. So, Stacey, what's next on the program?
Thanks, Bruce, Kristen. Lots happening in SE licensure. Appreciate the update. So our next, we're going to move into the Q&A. So this is an opportunity for our audience here to get involved. I see there's a few questions in the Q&A. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'm sure our panelists would prefer to address your questions as opposed to mine. So while you're doing that, I want to take 1 minute and Michelle, would you put up the survey slide? So we did ask each of the organization's members and everybody who signed up here just to respond to one quick question of which initiatives do you think are the most important for the profession. This was meant to drive input into the direction of where our 3 organizations are going, as well as where we take the next town hall that we'll have and what we want to focus on. So you can see from this clearly artificial intelligence, machine learning as it relates to our practice, got the most input. We had about 260 people respond to the survey, and more than half are interested in this topic. So there'll be certainly future. There is work going on in the organizations on this, and we'll address this in a future town hall. And you can see some of the other topics of elevating enhancing our overall visibility in nationally, talent pipeline, preparing graduates for the workforce, future structural engineering. Continuing education, and that's also strongly related to licensing, insurance contract standard of care, and employee retention are the other ones that also got significant greater than 10% response from the folks. Okay, so let's dive into some questions. So Michelle, maybe we take that off the screen and we have everybody can be then on camera. We've got maybe less than 20 minutes or so for some questions. I see a couple of them have shown up here. So if there's others, please put them in. So I'm going to ask some questions and I'll address them to somebody, but anybody is certainly welcome to respond. So Jerry, I'll address this one to you, right? So as how can we as civil engineers leverage innovative materials and construction techniques inspired by nature to not only enhance the sustainability of infrastructure projects, but also minimize the environmental footprint and maximize their long-term resilience to climate change and natural disasters?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think over time, there's going to be a variety of things that we can do. And I still believe that where we're at as a profession related to sustainability and resilience is relatively early in our process of understanding how to integrate these topics as premier design objectives. Certainly, each of the materials is working to reduce its embodied carbon, and there is work going on to incorporate nature-based materials increasingly into structures. The most obvious would be the mass timber industry. There's work going on now and a design guide out to incorporate cross-laminated timber into steel frame structures, incorporated cross-laminated timber into facades. Timber, of course, can sequester carbon. The steel industry is moving increasingly to get fabricate its material from 100% renewable energy, strictly through the use of electricity, and so on. And then with respect to resilience, Increasingly, I hope to see us develop and incorporate structural systems that incorporate replaceable components that absorb the energy from our extreme events, rather than absorbing that in our primary columns, girders, braces, walls. This can be done with our current construction practices, our current construction materials, and there's a variety of systems out there that do that. I think also there's a lot of interest in things like design for deconstruction and reusing structural components in future structures. But all of these are still pretty young. There are early adopters out there. These are starting to get used, but the industries are continuing to develop. Thank you.
Great. It's an exciting part of our profession, Jerry, right? I mean, the ability to develop new techniques and materials. That's a great part of what we get to do.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm gonna address a question more to Kristen here, and Bruce can jump in on licensure. So the question is really regarding the computer-based testing and the depth portions, which right now are only going to be offered on specific dates. Is there a timeline for those to be available year-round in the future, and any idea as to when that might happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question for NCES. At this point, and we had actually had a call last week about the topic. There is no future timeline. I would anticipate twice a year for now. It depends on how quickly they get a bank of questions. So it has to do with the testing functionality and the design of the test and how quickly it will be offered, as well as the testing center's ability to facilitate the exam. So at this point, I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay, I would agree. I've heard them say the same thing. It's about getting the bank of questions, right? When they have lots of technical jargon that they talk about and how they need to have a certain bank of questions, and they just don't have enough for the computer-based testing to do that just yet. So that will develop as they have more cases of administering the exam. Let's see here. So I'm going to go back again to Jerry. So Jerry, so SEI focus on improving building codes. This is Jerry or Don, I guess. Building code provide distinctive to structural engineers to invest in research and fall back on the building code requirements. Building code is necessary, preventing deaths, providing life safety, but not always about resilience, right, and economic loss. So should SEI develop state of practice rather than focus only on improving building codes? And I think you're doing some work on that already. So why don't you reiterate that a little for the group?
Yeah, I could.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah. Okay. So first, understand the view of the speaker. It's a great question. In many ways, building codes can drive innovation, but absolutely looking at some alternatives are important. And just as an example, SEI has developed a pre-standard for performance-based design for wind engineering that can provide an alternative approach to prescriptive design. And performance-based design in general is a priority for SEI with a number of initiatives that are ongoing. And certainly we support through our technical committees the concept of developing what are essentially state of practice and then potentially some design guides. So I think a variety of approaches here absolutely is important, especially for the types of issues such as roof damage, glass damage, and so on that are important out there. Don, would you like to add?
No, I appreciate Kishore's question. I looked at it when it was online, and Kishore, of course, former member of ASCE 7 and former leader of the wind provisions of ASCE 7. So I know Kishore well. But as the question goes, and as we talked about, currently I see a transition where we're going more into the resilience aspect even within our standards. As Jerry said, performance-based design is a great way to do it, but I mentioned Ryan's leading the effort on functional recovery into the seismic standards. So those type of things are being brought in, and they're being brought into the building code accordingly, because we do have to reduce the damages that we get from these major events. I mean, they're in the hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we have to pay. So we can't continue on that stream. Our country can't continue on that stream. And so we are including within our building codes and with our standards some resilience aspect. We're headed that direction. But like Jerry said, performance-based design is probably the best option that we have right now.
So I've got another question here, and I'm going to direct it to probably to Rose and Ryan, but certainly Kristen or Bruce could also jump in here. And this is just in regards again to licensure, right? And as we impose more licensure, is it potentially creating a barrier for more marginalized groups of people to enter our profession? And what are we doing about that? Has that been looked at all with the SE3 work? And what can we be doing about that? So maybe we start with Rose, and I'll put you on the spot. Has that been looked at with SE3 at all? And if not, that's okay. But just tell us what you think there.
To my knowledge, I do not think that the committee has explored that question in particular as it relates to the recent changes in licensure and the changes that Bruce and Kristen laid out. I will say that there are a variety of parallels to be drawn from our experience working in AEC tangential kind of professions. So the architecture profession has historically had this rolling cycle of exams and computer-based tests that people can take and sign up for that aren't imposed twice a year. And I think that the architecture profession and their professional organizations have done some in-depth studies about what that means and if it presents barriers to entry for people who are trying to get licensed, particularly those who belong to marginalized groups. So I'll kind of defer the question to a different profession so we don't have the data to back up what it might mean for us. But I do think it's a question worth considering as we roll out additional changes to our licensure laws.
So Stacey, if I could add to that, right now there are only 2 states that restrict the practice of structural engineering to licensed structural engineers. There are several other states, 8 states, that do restrict some structures, significant structures, to only practicing structural engineers, licensed structural engineers. So, many states are allowing non-licensed structural engineers, most states, to practice structural engineering. So, I don't think that it's necessarily a barrier, structural engineering licensing. It's definitely an enhanced form of licensure for the individual. And but as far as restricting the practice, I don't think there's really any trends within states to limit structural engineering to the practice of licensed structural engineers only.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Kristen, please.
So what Bruce was saying too is that the intent is not to be a barrier for practicing professionals in structural engineering. I do think there are probably multiple opinions on this. In some aspects, you can say that the 4 tests allows more, flexibility. Let's say, I'll just speak from experience as a young mom taking her tests with a 1-year-old, like, that was intense, and being able to maybe break it apart might be a benefit. But then to someone else, it might not be, because it's that much more time that they potentially have to stick with it and show that discipline to take the exam over 4 days, over a long extended time. I could see where someone maybe gets through 3, but not the 4th. So there's lots of different opinions potentially based on who the engineer is in licensure. But some of it also depends on the business community. I know from, Stacey, you and I have had this conversation as well. A lot of the businesses to recruit and maintain talent offer as a benefit to their employees reimbursement for the exam. And so now that's become more of a commitment also at the professional level that needs to be, addressed and encouraged potentially by the businesses, but at the same time might be considered a barrier for some businesses, let's say a smaller company versus a larger company. I don't know. It really just we just don't know yet how this new exam format is going to really impact the profession, but the intent is really about life safety and not about prohibiting anybody from the profession.
Yeah, Stacey, if I could just jump in real quick. Also, I think Kristen's hit a lot of good points that we've been talking about as we've seen the computer-based transition happening, that we do need some time to figure out what the impact will be to those taking the exams, both from the technical quality and the questions being asked, but also just the difficulty of arranging or the ease of arranging to take the tests. And so I think some of that we have all talked about at the joint leadership level between the three organizations, and we're trying to do our best to support the purpose of licensure and to enable individuals who want to gain that license to be prepared for that, no matter what their background might be. And so I think we're still all remaining committed to that and understanding we might have to change some of our tactics in the new computer-based environment. And then we'll have to see a little bit, as Kristen's saying, see how it goes and start to recognize if there may be needing some changes there if we start to get some data that suggests something's a little bit out of whack.
Yeah, agreed. Good stuff. There's a number of other questions on licensure here, but I think I'm going to some of the questions that people have posed here are fairly detailed and probably need to be addressed to NCEES, right? I'm not sure that we can answer all of those questions here. So I just want to make sure I give that general response to a few of those questions, and NCEES certainly is the person, or the group, I should say, to be responding to that. I actually have one question I'd like to ask more on the DEI topic, right? That was discussed, and just reflecting back, right? SE3 in my mind has been very important and influential in the last number of years. And not to put anybody on the spot, Rose or Ryan, you presented the topic, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Number one, what do you think's the number one impact that the work so far in our industry has had relative to DEI? And then follow on that, what do you think is the most important thing we need to be doing in the short term, right? I think we all recognize that DEI is a long-term issue that we need to be addressing. Where have we had the most influence so far? And what's the one thing in the short term that would be the biggest bang for our buck that we should be working on?
Rose, I want to let you jump in first.
Okay, thank you both for that. No, that's a really good question, Stacey. And when I reflect on where we started, 6 years ago, 8 years, however many years ago it was, versus where we are now, I think most of the leaders of the committee over the years have mixed feelings about how far we've come, what's been accomplished through the committee, and what is still left to do, right? Because everyone recognizes that this is a long game and a long journey to try and improve the profession over time. I think the biggest impact that we have had is honestly introducing the topic in the conversations in boardrooms, in leadership circles, in management committees, where people who are in a position to enact quicker change within the profession are having some strong considerations about it and what they need to do to create more inclusive workplace cultures. So I think that's the biggest impact that we have had. Putting aside the data and all of the things that people like to quote and cite based on it. Where we still have a lot of growth in front of us is, I think, more outreach and more willingness to hear opposing views. I just think that there has been in the years that I've been having this conversation with people within our profession, there is a little bit of a backlash, and there is a definite polarization of people who feel that, this isn't something I really want to talk about. I don't see how it relates to our profession. And I think what SE3 does, and hopefully efficiently, is bring to light just all the different ways that this is directly related to our work every day, and how it affects people who are trying to practice engineering and who may not feel welcome to do so. And so I think that's, if I had one thing to say I wish we could do better, it's just building the bridges between people who don't feel the same way about the topic, and trying to see a path forward for how we can have meaningful conversations about how to improve our workplace.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, Stacey, a little bit. Rose did a great job of capturing the thoughts there. I think we have actually come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but the work that SE3 and others have done to prepare us, to make us more aware as leaders of our organizations, as leaders of our firms, as advocates and allies, we wouldn't have been able to have these conversations without getting started somewhere. The conversations, Stacey, you were part of the conversations. Don, you were probably part of the board for SEI at the time too. The conversations we had back in 2020 in trying to figure out how we as organizations respond to the world around us and the racial unrest and the violence that was happening, and recognizing that there was a new world. I don't think we could have made those sorts of conclusions and the call to action if it hadn't been, the groundwork hadn't been laid by SE3 and others to bring us that awareness. You know, like I said, SE3 and others have been around for more than just since 2020. And a lot of people point to 2020 as a defining moment, but we wouldn't have been ready for 2020 without a lot of that groundwork already being laid. And then I'll just add, I'm thrilled when I look at the young people joining our profession. It is much more diverse than what our current profession is. So while I'm not going to say we should take credit for that, I think we should acknowledge that as an opportunity to embrace that diversity and to maintain and foster that diversity. At the NCSEA Summit, it's not due to NCSEA's planning, but we actually got to host SEOC, the Structural Engineers of California, had what they called their Pathways program. And it was an extremely meaningful experience for students who were in their 4th or 5th years of college, or young professionals in their first couple of years of their career. And the conversations they were having, the energy that they were sharing, the emotions they were having was building engagement, was building awareness, was building camaraderie like I hadn't seen in our profession before. So there are some really good things that are happening at the local levels that we are at NCSA trying to provide access to and spread across the country so that people know that there are good programs out there that we can all be embracing to help us along this journey.
If I could just add quickly, Stacey, the concept of impact of climate change on our profession, on infrastructure, on the environment is very much on students' minds. And civil and environmental engineering in academia often has some of the most diverse undergraduate student populations of any of the engineering disciplines, in fact, perhaps by a long shot. And so just advocating for what Ryan is saying here, I think the future there is bright because they're, especially at least initially, flocking to these types of topics. Now, the overall numbers going into civil and environmental engineering, there's always some pressure there because we're competing with the other engineering disciplines typically. And so this is something for us to keep in mind. And I think on that survey you showed, talent pipeline will always be an issue.
We have to capitalize on the higher calling of what we do, right? I mean, we impact society and safety and resilience, and these are just great things, right? And we have a huge opportunity to impact the environment. So
that's right.
Appreciate all that. Okay, what I'd like to do is we're down the last couple of minutes here. So I'd like to give each of our panelists 30 seconds for any final thoughts that you have, anything you'd like to share with the audience as we wrap it up. And I'm going to just call out names and give you 30 seconds, as I said. So I'm going to start with Bruce. Bruce, you're the first one.
Well, Stacey, there are many issues affecting the structural engineering profession today. Climate change, AI, changes in licensing. It was difficult to choose which topics to focus on today, but we have another shot in a year from now, and we're going to take to heart the survey results, and I look forward to furthering the discussion on some of these other topics a year from now.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Kristen.
My call would be just to engage in any of these conversations with any of these great entities. Your voice really gets heard in this community when you engage, and you really can impact change. So go volunteer.
Agreed. Participate. Ryan, please.
Yeah, I'm going to go down the path of AI just briefly. I know you're giving me 30 seconds, but it's active in all of our organizations. So I know we mentioned, Stacey, you mentioned it's something we'll be talking about, and we are going to be talking about when we meet as joint leadership again in May amongst the 3 organizations. I have to at least put a plug in for NCSEA's foundation. Look for an article in Structure Magazine coming, I think it's in April, that describes the NCSEA Foundation's Innovation in Structural Engineering AI grant program. And the work we're doing there, and we'll be engaging with sharing the results of that work with our SEI and CASE colleagues. I know there's a lot of work on AI. I know it's at the top of everybody's mind, and we will definitely have information between now and next year.
This is really you, Ryan, right? You're not an AI generated clone we're seeing here?
Not
All
today.
right.
I'm
Okay.
live here. My other person is in the other meeting. Yeah.
All right, good. All right, Rose, please.
I just like to piggyback on what Kristen said. I think that the organizations and the opportunities to engage are endless, and I really think that it's down to you as individuals, as representatives of our profession, to be the change that you want to see in our profession.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Jerry.
Yes. First, Stacey, I'd like to thank you for moderating today. And you know, I would like to encourage everyone to go to the conferences that our various organizations are hosting. People are coming back in force now over the last year or so. And SEI Con held with the North American Steel Construction Conference will have several thousand people there. So a lot of different kinds of opportunities. A lot of SEI committees are meeting there. I look forward to the NCSEA Summit in Las Vegas next November. So encourage you all to participate. Thank you.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Don, please.
Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it. And like I said, I appreciate everybody for being here today. But I guess my only comment is I'm pretty excited about the time that we have now, and particularly the voices that we have coming up in our young engineers that are coming out of business and what they can bring to this profession. There's a lot, as we discussed today, there's lots of changes going on within our design practices, within what is happening within our offices, within what's happening in licensure. And we need those younger voices to really help us to lead into the future. They're going to be the future in a very short time, more than we think. And so just encourage everybody to get involved. All of our organizations have opportunities for younger members to get involved, and that is really it. As I've done it on the standards side, and having those younger voices is always exciting, and they bring a lot of different perspectives in that we need in our organization. So I would just encourage everybody to get involved as much as they can.
Agreed. All right, I'll close from my point, just my final comments, and thank all of you in the panelists. Great information and all of the help behind the scenes from all three organizations that none of you in the audience see. And this doesn't happen easily and takes a lot of effort and time from many people. So thank you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle for just the final wrap-up comments.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you here today. That wraps up our town hall this year. We hope you found it informative. Thank you again for participating and for your thought-provoking questions. We're now going to launch an exit survey. Your participation will help us improve future events. Sometime in the next week, an edited recording will be posted and you'll get a link with that information. Please let us know if you'd like to participate in any of the activities discussed today. There's much to be done and we're always looking for help. Contact information is on the slide here and will be repeated in the communications that we send out later. Thank you all and have a great day.